What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Scott Procter alongside my guy Matt Morris per usual. We're back with another episode of Simple Question, but this time we'll have more than one because we got a special guest joining us today. He covers Iowa State hoops and football for 24/7 Sports. Nick Osen, how's it going, my man? Thanks for joining us.
I'm great, man. You know I always love catching up with you, and I'm honored to be a guest today.
Yes, sir. Love to hear it, man. Let's hop right into things, man. A little bit of a breaking news today out of Ames. Isaiah Brockington was just named the Big 12 Newcomer of the Year, also a Big 12 first team selection. Tell me about why Brockington was so deserving of that coming over from Penn State, and how important is he to, what the Cyclones do on the court?
Yeah, it was a huge award because there was potential, it could have been him or maybe a Bryson Williams of Texas Tech. But I think just the turnaround that Iowa State has had, led by Brockington, Hunter, and then obviously Coach Otzelberger, has just gotten so much national attention. I think it was huge that they got off to such a hot start this year, undefeated in non-conference, which does not happen too often, right? Especially because they played some legitimate tournament teams. Yep. So that was big. And then the fact that he brings it on both sides of the floor. He's their leading scorer, one of the leading scorers in the conference, but also at worst, their second best on-ball defender and a top rebounder in the conference. I believe he was top 3 and number 1 for guards. It's just really impressive the way he fills up the stat sheet, and the turnaround of the Cyclones led by Brockington and that kind of senior leadership, even coming from a transfer, has been really impressive to witness.
Yeah, and the other guy you mentioned in that was, Tyrese Hunter, who is also, the best freshman in the Big 12. What has he done that makes him that, and how big was it to have him come in and play the way that he has?
Yeah, he's a guy that I had high expectations for, and honestly, he has probably exceeded them. I knew that he could defend. I knew that he could take it to the rack. He can still improve his handles a little bit, to hopefully be a pro, all Big 12 performer. But the way that he just makes plays, he's not afraid of the moment. He's been having double-digit assist games recently, actually set an Iowa State freshman record. And he's had a really interesting, consistent first year at Iowa State. And honestly, as long as I'm here and, wherever he goes, I'm excited to watch him flourish throughout the rest of his career, because I do think that he's got legitimate pro aspirations and a chance to get there in a couple of years.
100%, man. I got a very simple question for you here, Nick. I'm going to ask it this way. Is Iowa State a tournament team? Joe Lunardi has them as a 9 seed in the latest bracketology. Have the Cyclones done enough to earn a spot in March Madness, or do you think they still have some work to do this weekend in the Big 12 tournament?
So first, I'll answer that with a simple answer. Yes. There is no doubt in my mind that they are a tournament team. I think because of it, we'll give 3 reasons, really. 1, they have a similar resume to a couple other teams that finished 4 games under, 500 within conference. There was actually an Oklahoma team. I believe Buddy Hield was on it still a few years back.
Yeah.
Very similar resume, so they got in there. They went undefeated in the non-conference with wins over teams like Iowa, safely in. Memphis, been playing really good basketball. Then some Big East teams, Creighton. And it's been really impressive, plus some of the wins they've gotten in conference. And on top of all of that, the bubble is weak. And other than Michigan, it actually may have gotten a little weaker the last 2 weeks with teams like Indiana and of that, similar ilk. Rutgers is another team on the bubble. We'll see. I think they've done enough, but I don't think there's really a doubt in my mind that they're in. And I think that's kind of the consensus feel both around the team and even around the Big 12. I think they're expecting to get those, what would it be, at least top 6 teams into the big dance.
Yeah, and Nick, you kind of mentioned it. Iowa State finished under 500 in conference play. Is that just more of a almost like a positive thing, just showing how tough the Big 12 is and how competitive they are? There's only 4 teams with a winning record right now in the Big 12.
I think that's a really, really smart way to put it. Obviously, that kind of shows not only the difficulty, but some of the depth in it as well. And I think that overall, look, they probably should have had 8 or 9. They let one slip recently at home, very winnable game. And then they actually had Kansas on the ropes in Lawrence back in January, kind of when I first started. But I do think it kind of speaks to that. And I think people around the country, I think Big 12 coaches have done a nice job kind of pontificating that way of how tough the Big 12 is.
Yep.
I think people have latched onto that, if you know what I'm saying. But I do think there's a lot of truth to that. I'm not sure at this point that it's the best. I don't know if they have the most teams make it, but I think that night to night, it is the toughest. I mean, I think there's really only one team that you would just be like, wow, that is not a good team in West Virginia. And they crushed the Cyclones in a game at their place. So I wouldn't be shocked to see the Big 12 get 6 teams in. And I'm pretty confident that Iowa State is one of them. I would put it at a 90 to 95% shot. Yep. For sure.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Texas Tech is up next for Iowa State to open the Big 12 tournament on Thursday night. These two teams split their 2 meetings early in the season. This was one of Iowa State's better wins of this season. How do you see this one on Thursday night playing out?
And that game, actually, the one that Iowa State won, was one of my first games covering the team.
Yeah.
And it was one where I really recognized, all right, Brockington is kind of going to be this dude. The offense was sputtering, but he came up with just a huge 4-point play late to help get them the victory. I think it's a good matchup for both teams, quite honestly. Texas Tech will be favored, rightfully so. They are the better team, but I don't love some of the depth that they've shown recently. They don't really have a true point guard per se that can make plays like Tyrese Hunter. 2 really good defenses. Quite honestly, I think Iowa State takes it because I think that the offense has found something the last 2 weeks in terms of rolls and slips to the hoop with some of their big men, primarily Robert Jones. Hunter's been able to find them in kind of a playmaking vacuum. And on top of that, Gabe Kelcher was really hot Saturday at Baylor. I don't know if you guys caught any of that game. It had a lot of competition of some of the other top games in the land, but Iowa State almost beat Baylor. They came back from down 25, took a lead. I think they were leading with under 4 minutes to play.
Yep.
So I've got some pretty high expectations, not just in that game, but I do think Iowa State has the potential and the propensity to maybe make a little noise in March.
Yeah, and that was one of the things you noticed about Iowa State is that they did have a lot of little close wins or close losses, I should say. And that game against Baylor was awesome. Does that just kind of speak to, obviously you talked about Brockington, but the defense to me is what really stands out. And is that how Iowa State's going to do anything, is just by this impressive defense that is really good at causing teams to turn the ball over?
Exactly. That is kind of going to be their backbone and really their reason for any success that they're able to have. They have guys that can score the rock, right? Like I mentioned, Brockington, Hunter's impressed, and even a guy off the bench like Caleb Grill can get hot. But for them to play to their potential, they need to be forcing turnovers. Like you said, they're high activity with ball pressure. And it's kind of a defense that's going to allow some layups, some open threes, because they're just so active on the ball. Sometimes there might be a rotation loss, but I'm not sure what was said at halftime of that game in Baylor, but I think that really is going to be a spark. I could be wrong about Thursday. Like Texas Tech obviously has a lot to play for as well. Right. But either way, unless there is just a terrible draw, I do expect that. I said it on, a podcast I just started and on my message board. I do almost expect Iowa State to at least get to that second round. Now we might call it the third round, right? With the first 4. But I do think it's not a disappointment, but a bit of a letdown if they can't win one game in the big dance just because of the potential that they showed, even in some of the losses, like you mentioned.
And I think it's even a positive sign that it would be a disappointment if they don't win a game in the tournament, when you look at the fact that they won 2 games all of last season. So that in itself kind of speaks to the turnaround that the Cyclones have kind of been able to undergo. I want to switch gears here from Iowa State, kind of talk about the dance as a whole, because I know you're a basketball fan, period.
The best sport, right?
100%. Who do you, at this point, like to win it all? At least a championship matchup. Who are maybe 2 to 4 teams that you're looking at that you see as, you can see them kind of being the last few or so teams standing?
So I'll go with one kind of obvious one, and then a team that I have been high on for so long. They actually just got a big win yesterday. So I do think this is potentially I know people say it every year. I do think this could be the year Gonzaga does it, not because I think this is the best team they've had, but just because there's not one dominant team this year. In my heart, don't believe there is, which I think can make just another incredible tournament like we had last year and like we had in 2019, that Texas Tech Virginia year. So I'll go with that. The one that's gotten a lot of noise, obviously because of Oscar, is Kentucky. I'm pretty high on that team as well. But the one that I have had my eye on, they just eked out a huge win. There are not many more teams with more talent, is Illinois. I'm interested to hear what you guys think about that. But the expectations were there.
Yep.
They regrouped recently, obviously grabbing a share of the Big Ten title with the Wisconsin Badgers. And just the high-low options that they have. I think Underwood is a top 8 to 10 coach in the country, at least this year.
Thanks.
And it feels like there is that extra level to them. The only thing I worry about with that team is going to be basically if there's a defensive-minded big that can kind of slow down Kofi a little bit, who's going to reliably get you some points. And they do have lapses on defense as well, but that would be kind of my team. I can't wait to see, where they're kind of put. I'd probably guess 3 or 4 seed based on how they're ranked, but that could move up depending on how they do in the Big Ten tournament. Right. And that's a team that I have very high expectations for, especially after the IO-led team, Chicago Bull, after they didn't get quite as far as they should have last season.
100%. No, I can see that. I agree because the second half is very encouraging. Obviously, to have a big, win over Iowa to get a share of the Big Ten title. And you mentioned it, Kofi is going to be a problem for just about anybody. And if the team has an answer for them, then, more power to you. And hopefully, Frazier, Curbelo, I like Williams as well. They have some depth. Yeah. And I would hope that, the letdown that was last season, is still in their minds, and hopefully they can, make a little run. But I like that. I like Kentucky a lot as well. But we're really on the same page with Gonzaga. Matt will tell you that was my about a month and a half ago now at this point. And I agree with you. I don't think Gonzaga is better than they were last year, but I think this team is still probably the best, and they're definitely capable of winning it all.
Yeah, I mean, Scott came out pretty early on and said Gonzaga was his national title winner. So he's been on that Zag strain for a little bit. And I do like your point that there isn't this one favorite, and that does make for a way more exciting tournament. There's been so many upsets. But to kind of go back one last time to Iowa State, we've kind of talked a little bit about it, but this was a team that was 2-22 last year. They had their only wins were against very, kind of smaller teams, mid-major teams. How big was this turnaround, and what do you kind of credit for, going from 2 wins to 20 wins in one season?
I like that. I will go from, kind of baseline to a little bit more of an optimistic. I'll say, first off, last year was absolutely an anomaly, both, nationally and with Iowa State. I mean, that's not what this program is known for. I know Scott is big into the NBA. I'm sure you guys are. Like, this is a program that gets NBA talent consistently. Absolutely. So I knew that wasn't going to happen again. I think more than anything, it was kind of this feeling of Brockington, transfer. Gabe Kalsher, transfer. They've got 5 to 7 transfers that are literally playing. People that either they didn't love their previous spots or they didn't feel like they were doing what they could be, right? Reaching their potential. So that came together. And then it's cliche, but I think they had a little extra motivation after people unanimously voted them to finish last in the conference. I think there is a certain level of disrespect there that, anybody with a competitive pulse, myself included, I think I can speak for many people that if you get doubted like that, that's an extra buzz. And then the fact that it came out of nowhere so early, Matt, like this grinded out defense, forcing turnovers. Brockington's a revelation. Caleb Grill can shoot. Oh, what is this Jazz Kuntz guy doing? Wow, he can hit threes. They showed some depth initially. And the cool thing is I think they can win in any way except one. If you get in a shootout, they're not likely to win. But they've shown that they can come back. They've shown that they can score when they need to, including recently at Hilton. And then, of course, a grinded out battle, they love that. Like the Texas Tech game, like a Texas game that was kind of stalling late. Creighton early in season. So I don't know. I mean, you guys are getting me even more excited to, kind of cover and watch the rest of the way. I'm definitely more of an optimistic person, but I think that the biggest reason is, just this gelling and this feeling of we may not have fit elsewhere. People are doubting us. Let's see what we can do here. And I couldn't really be more impressed with TJ Otzelberger. I mean, I don't know him. We have some, type of relationship. I don't know him quite on personal level yet, but he not only seems like a good person, but the way he can just get everything out of these guys and give it out on the floor, I think that's big. And I'm excited to, meet with the media and the players soon. And guys, this has been so fun. I would do this again. I mean, it's getting me really excited to, kind of be back out there and watch what these Cyclones can do the rest of the way, both this season. And as I've been, tweeting and reporting, some of the top players will be back next year as well.
100%. I'm going to close it here, Nick, with something that'll hopefully get you excited again, or hopefully that's something that has brought you some excitement. The Bulls, man. Obviously, we're both Chicago Bulls fans. They've given us some excitement for the most of the season since the top of the Eastern Conference. They've fallen it back a little bit recently with a tough schedule. Obviously, some injuries that's hampered them the whole season. What have you enjoyed most about the Bulls turnaround? And kind of a more general question, how do you feel about the top of the NBA? Who do you think is going to be standing come June?
Man, you always know what to ask. The first part, I'm going to go nice and easy. DeMar DeRozan. And it sounds
marvelous.
So obvious, but it's so cool. I mean, the people closest to me that we've watched NBA, I've been a fan for years. The Lowry and DeRozan backcourt, I loved it. What he said about mental health 3 or 4 years ago, that resonated with me. And people were so disrespectful in the offseason about that, addition. I mean,
the worst free agent signing, really.
Yeah, right. Whether they do anything, really in the playoffs or not, I mean, that was too far. And he's been incredible, first or second team All-NBA. And in general, kind of like the college game, to an extent, I think that the NBA is as wide open as it has been for a few years. I do think there's one juggernaut right now. That's the Phoenix Suns. I think that when they are healthy, they are the best team. But focusing on the East, I came away from that Nets trade thinking I like this long-term for the Nets, but they've just gotten so far into the standings. I like the Heat. I've been high on them from before the year.
Yeah, you have.
Bulls, like we mentioned. Oh, yeah, we had even talked about that. Sixers, they look special right now. I don't love their depth, but I mean, when you've got 2 or 3 guys like that, Embiid, Harden, and then Maxey, you're likely to win a playoff series. And then the Bucks. I think the biggest question mark is the Nets and then maybe the defense of the Bucks, but I think the East is wide open. Those first 4 teams should win a playoff series. Celtics have looked nice, but they've looked nice at times throughout the last few years. And then the West, I think there are maybe a couple less teams that really could do damage. Grizzlies have been so fun, but I'm not sure this is their year yet. I think I ride with the Phoenix Suns and then one of those first 2 teams in the East at this point.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I can envision a rematch, quite honestly, Phoenix, Milwaukee, without even Book and CP3 in the lineup. That was still an exciting game. It just speaks to how well coached, how good Phoenix is. And yeah, I think the Bucks. I'd be shocked if the Bucks or the Sixers didn't represent the Eastern Conference in the finals. It's going to be fun to watch.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch nonetheless. But that's going to do it for us, Nick. Really appreciate your time, your insight per usual. Go follow Nick on Twitter. Follow his Twitter, his new podcast that's coming out. But that's going to do it for us, though. For Scott Procter, Matt Morris, our guy, Nick Osen, we'll catch you on the next episode of Simple Questions.